Chapter 1. The fog. The fog didn't just roll into Crestwater Bay, it consumed it. It swallowed the jagged cliffs first, a pale gray maw erasing the hard line of the world. Then it consumed the skeletal masts of the fishing boats in the harbor, silencing them, turning them into a phantom fleet. Finally, it crept inland, street by street, wrapping its cold, damp arms around the town itself. It was a shroud, and it felt, to Detective Miles Corbin, unnervingly appropriate. His car, a nondescript departmental sedan that smelled faintly of stale coffee and regret, cut through the gloom. The wipers kept a slow, hypnotic rhythm, thwack, pause, thwack, partners in a losing battle against the omnipresent drizzle. This place, Corbin thought, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. It smells like the end of the line. He was here because the end of the line had come for 3 people. Officially, unofficially, the county coroner had used the word anomalies, and in Corbin's line of work, anomalies was a sanitized placeholder for murder. He'd spent the previous night in the Crestwater Inn, a single-story motel that smelled of damp carpet and pine-scented disinfectant. He hadn't slept. He'd lain on the stiff sheets, listening to a foghorn's mournful, 2-tone cry, a sound like a great beast dying in the dark. In those hours, the past had come for him, as it always did in strange, quiet rooms. Clara, her face in the clinical half-light of the oncology ward, pale and drawn, her eyes wide with a fear she tried to hide from him. The sharp, antiseptic smell that failed to mask the deeper, sweeter scent of decay. He remembered the awful, suffocating helplessness, watching the lines on the monitor, listening to the rhythmic, artificial puff of the ventilator. He remembered the feel of her hand, thin and dry, in his. He had wanted, in those final moments, for it all to stop, for her to be at peace. The thought had been a dark, guilty whisper in his own mind, a betrayal of the vow to fight, to hope. When the end finally came, it wasn't a release. It was just an absence, a sudden, vast silence that the beeping machines only emphasized. He'd hated the doctors for their polite, practiced sorrow. He'd hated the hospital for its sterile, indifferent efficiency. Most of all, he'd hated himself for that one moment of wishing for the end. Now, he was here to investigate an end. 3 of them, in a hospital. The irony was a cold, hard knot in his gut. Chapter 2. The station. The local police station was a squat brick building that seemed to be actively surrendering to the ivy crawling up its walls. Chief Miller, a man in his late 50s, met him at the door. His face was a roadmap of burst capillaries and coastal sun, his uniform straining slightly over a belly built by beer and boredom. He had the look of a man drowning in paperwork he didn't understand in a situation he didn't want. Detective Corbin, appreciate you coming all this way, Miller said, his handshake firm but clammy. It's a mess. Coffee, please, Corbin said, shedding his trench coat. The damp wool was heavy on his shoulders. He was a tall man, broad but stooped, as if carrying a weight only he could see. His eyes, the color of the bay on a storm day, missed nothing. Thin as the word, Miller sighed, leading him to a back office. A whiteboard was covered in shaky, angry handwriting. Street, Jude's Hospital, up on the hill, our only hospital, the town's biggest employer. The town's, it's the town's heart. Tell me, Corbin said, accepting a styrofoam cup of black, bitter coffee. Agnes Gable, 88, Miller said, tapping the board. Natural causes, they said. Heart failure. 3 weeks ago. Then Peter Sloan, 62. Complications from pneumonia, they said. 2 weeks ago. Then, 2 nights ago, Mary Thorne, 54. A stroke. All in the last 3 weeks. All on the 3rd floor, the recovery wing. And you don't believe they were natural. Miller ran a hand through his thinning hair. Mary Thorne's husband, Elias. He's a fisherman. Tough as brine. He raised hell. said Mary was recovering, said she was fine that afternoon, complaining about the food. Then, boom, gone. He loved her. Hard. You know the type. All calluses and quiet anger. He tapped a file. He demanded an autopsy. County coroner found anomalies. Anomalies, Corbin repeated, savoring the word. Potassium levels on Mary Thorne were astronomical, off the charts, enough to stop her heart, fast and clean. So, we looked back, got the order to exhume Sloane. His were high, too. Not as high, but way outside the therapeutic range. Agnes Gable. She'd been cremated. Husband's dead. Kids are scattered. No one to stop it. So we're missing our first victim. Not quite, Miller said, a flicker of pride in his eyes. The lab tech who drew her blood the night she died. Young guy, knew. He forgot to discard the sample. It was still in the fridge. We ran it. She had an insulin level that could have stopped a horse's heart, and she wasn't diabetic. Potassium, insulin, Corbin murmured. Different methods. Smart, versatile, but the same result. So, we have a killer. One with access. A doctor. A nurse. That's the hell of it, detective. Miller looked haunted. Street. Jude's. It's not just a building. It's Dr. Finch. Alistair Finch. The man's a saint. He runs that place, not just on paper, but in spirit. He's saved half the people in this town, me included. Appendix, 2011. The idea that someone inside that place, it's like finding a snake in a church. The idea, Corbin interrupted, his voice quiet but sharp, is that you have a wolf in the sheep pen. And it's feeding. I need to see the hospital. Chapter 3. Street. Jude's Street. Jude's perched on a hill overlooking the bay, a monument of old brick and new, sterile glass. The original 1920s structure, dark with ivy and time, was flanked by a modern wing that gleamed, even in the fog. It was a place of jarring contrasts, a marriage of old-world piety and new-world technology. Corbin felt the familiar tightness in his chest as he walked through the automatic doors. Antiseptic, floor wax, and underneath it all, the faint, metallic tang of sickness and old coffee. He walked past a waiting room where a young family huddled, silent, the mother staring at her hands while the father bounced a crying baby. He saw a man in a wheelchair, his face a gray mask, staring blankly at a TV playing a garish game show. This was a house of polite, managed misery. His hatred for it was a cold, hard stone in his gut. He and Miller were shown to the top floor, to the administrator's office. Evelyn Reed was a woman in a perfectly tailored pantsuit, her blonde hair pulled into a knot so tight it seemed to be actively pulling her face taut. Her smile was a painted-on grimace, a brief muscular spasm that didn't touch her cold, assessing eyes. Her office was all glass and chrome, a sterile box overlooking the churning gray water. "This is a terrible disruption, detective," she said, not offering them a seat. She remained standing behind her massive, empty desk. "Our work here is delicate. Public confidence is paramount. Public confidence is the last thing you should be worried about, Ms. Reed. You've got a homicide investigation on your hands. We have a series of unfortunate deaths," she corrected, her voice like ice. "Street. Jude's has a reputation for excellence. Dr. Finch himself is a pioneer in cardiac care. Is he here?" "Dr. Finch is in surgery. A triple bypass. He has a full schedule. We are, after all, still trying to save lives." The "unlike you" was left unsaid, but it hung in the air. "I need access to the third-floor duty rosters for the last month. All personnel files for staff who worked those shifts, and the pharmaceutical logs for potassium chloride, insulin, and, let's say, all respiratory depressants and sedatives." Evelyn Reed's face tightened. "That is a significant request. Patient privacy is secondary to murder, Corbin cut her off. Get me the files, or I'll get a warrant and shut down this entire wing. Your call. Reed's eyes flashed, but she nodded curtly. I will have them sent to the office you're using. Chief Miller arranged it. One more thing, Ms. Reed. Who benefits from these deaths? Any recent, large donations to the hospital from their estates? Her face went from icy to outrage. Absolutely not. Agnes Gable's house is in probate. Peter Sloane was nearly bankrupt. And Mary Thorne. The Thorns are fishermen, detective. We are not. Preying on our patients. What a disgusting insinuation. It's a disgusting business, Ms. Reed. I'll be on the 3rd floor. As he left, Corbin paused. One last thing. How's the hospital's budget? You in the black? Evelyn Reed's composure cracked for a fraction of a second. That is hardly relevant, is it? Corbin pressed, turning back. Elderly patients, patients with complex, failing conditions. They're a drain on resources, aren't they? Bed blockers? We provide care to everyone. She spat, her professional mask slipping to reveal a cold fury. I'll take that as a yes, Corbin said, and walked out. Later that afternoon, in the drab, borrowed office, a stack of files arrived. Tucked inside the budget reports Corbin had also requested, he found an internal memo from Reed. It was a cold, corporate document about resource allocation, end-of-life care pathways, and the significant financial burden of long-term, low-recovery patients. It was a motive of a kind, a cold, calculating, administrative motive. He pinned it to his new whiteboard. Chapter 4. The night nurse Corbin left Miller to sort through the personnel files and walked to the 3rd floor. The recovery wing. It was quieter here, the 3 p.m. lull. The lights were dimmer, the air heavier. The nurse's station was a small island of light in the long, dim corridor. He saw a nurse, older, with weary eyes and a slumped posture, meticulously filling out charts. Her name tag read, Brenda Sykes, RN. Nurse Sykes? She looked up, startled. Then her face settled back into a mask of professional exhaustion. Detective Corbin. Ms. Reed said you'd be lurking. I'm looking into the recent deaths. Agnes Gable, Peter Sloane, Mary Thorne. Brenda Sykes' pen stopped moving. She looked down the empty hall, then back at him. Her voice was low, rough from too many cigarettes or too much quiet talking. Tragic. It's always tragic. Mary Thorne's husband seems to think it was more than tragic. The nurse let out a short, bitter laugh. Elias Thorne. He's been vocal. He doesn't understand. People die, detective. It's a hospital. That's what happens here. We fight, we patch, we comfort. But in the end, the house always wins. You were on duty for all 3 deaths, weren't you, nurse? Her eyes, gray and tired, met his. Yes, so was Dr. Finch. So was Dr. Chen. So was half the night staff. It's a small hospital. We all pull long shifts. Dr. Chen? Michael Chen. The new resident. Smart. A bit cold. All book, no bedside. She dismissed him with a shrug. What was Mary like? That last night. Sykes paused, seeming to genuinely consider it. Quiet. Scared. Elias had been in, all bluster and saltwater, telling her she'd be mending nets in a week. She didn't look like she believed him. She looked at Corbin, a flicker of something raw in her expression. She was tired. Sometimes, the fight just goes out of them. And did someone help it along? Brenda Sykes stood up, her small frame rigid. You're barking up the wrong tree, detective. You want to look for a monster? Go down to the on a Saturday night. Or look at what this job does to people. We're underfunded, understaffed, and overworked. Ms. Reed, up in her glass box, is cutting our overtime while buying a new MRI machine for the press release. That's the crime here. People make mistakes when they're running on fumes for 16 hours. So, these were mistakes? A potassium overdose? An insulin overdose? Those are big mistakes, nurse. Her face flushed with anger. I'm saying, it's a possibility. I didn't see anything. I didn't do anything. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual patients to see. She walked away, her rubber-soled shoes making an angry, squeaking sound on the polished floor. That evening, Corbin sat in his car across from Sykes's apartment complex. It was a rundown, two-story building on the edge of town. At 7 p.m., she emerged, not in her uniform, and drove a rusted-out hatchback not to the hospital, but to a small, neat house in the older part of town. Corbin parked down the street. He watched as Sykes went inside. Through the front window, he could see her in the living room, tending to a frail, white-haired woman in a hospital bed. He watched her gently lift the woman, change her pillows, hold a cup of water to her lips. The anger he'd seen at the hospital was gone, replaced by a tenderness that was almost painful to watch. He felt a pang of something he hadn't expected, empathy. He also felt a cold, professional suspicion. She's stealing morphine for her mother, a voice in his head surmised. A woman that desperate, that compromised. What else was she capable of? Chapter 5. The St. Corbin didn't get to meet Dr. Finch until the next morning. He'd gone to the local diner for breakfast, a place called the Salty Spoon. The moment Finch walked in, the atmosphere of the place changed. It was like a switch had been thrown. The clatter of plates quieted. The waitress, a middle-aged woman named Flo, beamed. Morning, drive. Finch. The usual? Morning, Flo. Please. And a slice of that apple pie if it's fresh. For you, always. A man in a booth behind Corbin leaned out. Doctor, you've got to see my boy's knee. He's pitching again. Alistair. Thank you. My wife's roses are beautiful, said another. Finch handled it all with an easy, radiant grace. He was a man in his late 50s, with a shock of silver hair, kind blue eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and the easy, confident posture of a man who knew, without question, that he was doing good in the world. He was the town's saint, and this diner was his morning chapel. Corbin waited until Finch was leaving, intercepting him on the sidewalk. The fog was thinner today, revealing a pale, sickly sun. Dr. Finch? Detective Corbin. I'm with the state. Finch's smile didn't fade, but it focused. He approached, hand extended. You must be the man Chief Miller called about. Alistair Finch. This is a terrible business. Just terrible. His handshake was dry and strong. He smelled of antiseptic soap and something pleasant, like cloves. Doctor, you were the attending physician for all three victims, Corbin said, skipping the pleasantries. Finch's expression sobered instantly. He nodded, his gaze direct. I was. Agnes, Peter, Mary. I'd known Agnes for 20 years. I delivered Mary's first grandchild. He looked away for a moment, toward the gray sea beyond. I can't find the words. To lose one is a blow. To lose three, it feels like a failure. A personal failure. The coroner's report suggests it wasn't a failure, doctor. It suggests it was an act. Finch's head snapped back. A what? An act? What are you implying? Potassium, insulin, not things that just happen. The doctor's face, so full of warmth a moment before, became a mask of cold fury. Are you suggesting one of my staff? No, absolutely not. That's monstrous. It is monstrous. Yes, Corbin agreed, his voice soft. But it happened. I'm trying to find out how. Tell me about Mary Thorne. Finch visibly composed himself, the physician taking over. Mary. She'd had a mild CVA. She was recovering well. Prognosis was good. We were looking at rehab within the week. I checked on her myself around 8 p.m. She was in good spirits. A bit anxious, but that's normal. I told her to get some rest. Nurse Sykes was on duty. When I got the call at 3 a.m., a massive, unexpected coronary event, I was stunned. And Peter Sloan? Peter was weaker. Nasty pneumonia. We were hitting it with everything. He was in and out of delirium. His family was struggling. He was in pain. But he was fighting. Or we were fighting for him. And Agnes? Agnes was 88, detective. Her heart was tired. She was ready. She told me so herself. She said, "Alistair, don't you dare let me waste away." But she was stable. She was ready. The words hung in the air, a chilling echo of Corbin's own dark thoughts in Clarice's room. "This is a small town, Drive. Finch," Corbin said, watching the man's face. "And a small hospital. You've been here a long time. You know everyone. Their families. Their secrets. We're a community," Finch said, his warmth returning, but now it felt defensive. "We care for our own. I care for my patients as if they were my family. And sometimes, families have to make difficult decisions." Alistair Finch's eyes hardened. "I follow the law, detective. I follow my oath. To do no harm. I fight for every breath, every heartbeat. That is my only job. Sometimes, despite our best efforts, we lose. But we never surrender. To suggest otherwise is an insult to me and to my entire staff." He checked his watch. "Now, I have patients who are still alive to attend to. If you'll excuse me." He walked away, a wake of quiet authority following him. Corbin watched him go, a cold knot in his stomach. The man was perfect. Too perfect. His grief was perfect. His anger was perfect. His compassion was perfect. Chapter 6. The Fisherman's Grief. Corbin drove down to the harbor. The fog was still thick on the water, the mournful sound of a distant foghorn echoing off the hills. He found Elias Thorne mending nets on a dock that smelled of salt, diesel, and dead fish. Thorne was a mountain of a man, his face carved from weathered oak, his eyes red-rimmed and raw. "Detective," he spat on the dock. "You find him yet? You find the bastard who killed my Mary?" "We're working on it, Mr. Thorne. I need to know about her last day." Elias's hands, scarred and huge, stopped moving. He stared at the gray water. "She was good. She was herself. She complained about the food. Said it tasted like cardboard. She told me to stop tracking mud in her hospital room." A tear cut a clean path through the grime on his cheek. He wiped it away angrily. "She was fine. And that doctor, Finch." Corbin tensed. "What about him?" "He came in while I was there. All soft words. 'Mary, we're taking such good care of you. Elias, she's strong.'" He put his hand on her shoulder. Thorne's voice dropped to a venomous whisper. "And she flinched. My Mary. She wasn't afraid of anything. Fought a rogue wave with me for 6 hours. But she looked at him. And she was afraid." "Afraid of Finch? Why?" "I don't know," Elias growled. "But she wasn't herself after he came. Like he'd let the air out of her. When I was leaving, I told her I'd be back at sunrise." "What did she say?" She just smiled, that fake smile she used for the taxman. And after he left, she told me to go home. She said she was tired. That she loved me. She never said that. Not first. Not like that. It was like she was saying goodbye." Elias broke down then, a great, shuddering wreck of a man. Corbin stood there, a silent, awkward witness to the raw, jagged edges of grief. She was tired. The same words Nurse Sykes had used. The same sentiment Drive. Finch had applied to Agnes Gable. A new thought, cold and sharp, cut through Corbin's mind. He left Thorne to his grief and drove to a small town an hour up the coast. He found Peter Sloane's estranged wife, Janice, working in a flower shop. She was a thin, nervous woman who twisted a dish rag in her hands as she spoke. "Peter? God, I hadn't. I left him 6 months ago. He was A sad man, detective. A deep, deep sadness. His business failed, our son. He doesn't talk to him. He was just hollowed out. And the pneumonia. He called me from the hospital. He said he was done fighting. He said he was just a burden. He sounded like he wanted to die. Did he mention drive, Finch? Only that he was kind, she said, looking confused. He said Dr. Finch was the only one who really listened. He said, he understands, Jan. He really understands. I thought it was just the pain talking. Corbin drove back to Crestwater Bay, the wipers beating their slow rhythm against the fog. He understands. The words echoed Elias Thorne's. She was afraid. Two entirely different reactions to the same man. Chapter 7. The air. The next day, a new player arrived. Arthur Gable, 55, son of the first victim, Agnes. He was a stark contrast to the weathered locals. He wore a sharp suit, a Bluetooth earpiece, and an expression of profound impatience. He'd flown in from Chicago. Corbin met him at Miller's office. Mr. Gable, my condolences. Yes, terrible, Gable said, checking his phone. Look, I'm here to settle the estate. Mother's house needs to be sold. I just heard about this investigation. It's absurd. Your mother was murdered, Mr. Gable. My mother was 88 and had a bad heart, Gable said, finally looking up. His eyes were cold and blue, like glacial ice. She died. Now, this delay. It's complicating probate. What exactly are you suggesting? I'm investigating, Corbin said, his dislike for the man instant and visceral. Did your mother seem depressed? Despondent? Gable scoffed. She was 88. She was old. She lived alone. She read her books. We weren't close. I sent a check every month. Look, if you want a culprit, look at the hospital. It's a second-rate facility in a third-rate town. It's incompetence, malpractice. That's where the money is. You're planning to sue? I'm keeping my options open, Gable said. My mother's will leaves everything to a local cat shelter, if you can believe it. She cut me out years ago. So no, detective, I didn't benefit. But I'm not going to let this circus drag on. Find a clumsy nurse, pin it on her, and let me get back to my life. He was another red herring. The cold, unfeeling son. But his motive was complicated. He didn't benefit from the death, but he wanted a quick, clean solution. He wanted a scapegoat, just like Corbin suspected Evelyn Reed did. Chapter 8. The administrator's gambit. His thought was confirmed an hour later. Evelyn Reed summoned him back to her glass and chrome office. This time, she was smiling. It was a thin, reptilian smile. Detective Corbin, I've been doing some digging on your behalf. To expedite things. She slid a file across her desk. This is the file of a Thomas Driscoll, a janitor. We terminated his employment 2 months ago. For theft, specifically, from the pharmaceutical lockers. He had a key. He was a recovering addict. Corbin opened the file. Driscoll had been caught stealing fentanyl patches. He was fired 2 months ago. The murders started 3 weeks ago. He has a cousin who still works in laundry, Reed said, her voice smooth. He could still have access. He's desperate. He knows the hospital. He fits the profile of a disturbed individual, doesn't he? Corbin looked at her. She was feeding him a suspect. A junkie. An easy, plausible, disposable bad guy. It would wrap everything up in a neat little bow. The hospital would be a victim of a rogue ex-employee. Public confidence would be restored. Dr. Finch's sacred reputation would be untouched. Where is he? Corbin asked, playing along. He lives in a trailer park south of town. I'm sure Chief Miller can find him. Corbin spent a miserable, wet afternoon tracking down Thomas Driscoll. He found him, all right. He was a 20-year-old kid, skeletal and sick, living in a rust bucket trailer. He was also in the advanced stages of withdrawal, having pawned his last possession for a fix that was already wearing off. I never went back. Driscoll sobbed, huddled on a stained mattress. I stole for me, but I wouldn't hurt anyone. I'm sick, man, I'm just sick. Corbin looked at the kid, at the sheer, pathetic misery of his small, ruined life. This wasn't a meticulous, calculating killer. This was just wreckage. He left the trailer, feeling a cold rage at Evelyn Reed. She hadn't just wasted his time. She had tried to pin 3 murders on a desperate kid to save her hospital's reputation. Chapter 9. The resident. He needed a new angle. He needed to break the weak link. He needed Dr. Chen. He found Michael Chen in the on-call room, asleep on a cot, his textbook open on his chest. Corbin didn't bother to knock. He just opened the door and turned on the light. Wah! Chen sat bolt upright, glasses askew, his face pale with sleep and sudden terror. Detective, what time is it? Time to talk, doctor. Corbin didn't move from the doorway. I'm tired of being lied to. I'm tired of being led in circles. You were on duty for all 3 deaths. You were at the station. You saw something. I told you. I was charting. No, you're lying. You're terrified of Dr. Finch. Why? I'm not. Chen's voice was a high-pitched squeak. He's my attending. He's a brilliant physician. I respect him. You respect him so much you can't look me in the eye? I went to see Thomas Driscoll. The junkie janitor Ms. Reed is trying to frame. Chen flinched. I don't know anything about that. But you know it's a lie. Corbin pressed, stepping into the room. The space was tiny, smelling of stale air and sweat. You know it wasn't him. You know it wasn't Nurse Sykes. Which just leaves. Who? Doctor? You? Or Finch? It wasn't me. Chen scrambled off the cot, backing against a locker. I didn't do anything. But you saw something. Mary Thorne. The night she died. You were there. No, I was checking the fluid charts. And, Dr. Finch was there. He was talking to her, very quietly. She was crying. Elias Thorne said she was afraid. Was she afraid? No, not afraid. Chen stammered, wringing his hands. She looked like my aunt when she had to put her dog down. She looked resigned and grateful. Corbin's blood ran cold. Grateful? I don't know. He had his hand on her arm. And then, he saw me, in the doorway. What did he do? He just smiled. Not his big, warm diner smile. A small smile. A private smile. And he put a finger to his lips. Like, shish. Like it was our secret. A professional courtesy. And what did you do? Corbin's voice was a whisper. I left, Chen said, his voice cracking. I'm a resident. He's Alistair Finch. I went back to the station. I didn't see anything. I didn't see an IV. I didn't see a needle. I saw nothing. Please, I have my whole career. You saw him, and you saw her. And she was grateful, Corbin said, disgust and understanding dawning in equal measure. And he knew you saw. And he knows you're a scared, ambitious coward who will keep his mouth shut. Corbin left Chen shaking in the small, bright room. He had it, not proof, but he had the shape of it. The terrible, awful shape. Chapter 10. The God in the Corridor. Corbin walked the halls of the 3rd floor that night. He couldn't go back to the motel. He couldn't sit in the station. He needed to be in the place, in the arena. He walked past the room where Mary Thorne had died. He walked past Peter Sloane's old room. They were empty, scrubbed, waiting. The air was still, heavy with the hum of the ventilation. He remembered Clara, in her room. The night before the end. She had been lucid, for an hour. She'd grabbed his hand. Miles, she'd whispered, her voice a dry rasp. I'm so tired. Make it stop. I can't, Clara. I can't, he'd sobbed, his head on her blanket. I know, she'd whispered. I know. He'd been helpless. He'd had no power. He could only watch and wait and grieve. You look like a man carrying a heavy burden, Detective. Corbin's head snapped up. Doctor. Finch was standing not 10 feet away, in his scrubs, his silver hair backlit by the light from the nurse's station. He looked calm, serene. Doctor. Late night. The work is never done, Finch said, his voice a soft, soothing baritone. I was just checking on Helen, in 312. She worries at night. He gestured down the hall. This place. It's different in the dark, isn't it? The hope of the daylight fades. You're left with the reality. And what's that? Corbin asked, his hand instinctively near his side. That we're all just passing through, Finch said. He walked slowly closer, his hands clasped behind his back. That we all just want a little comfort, a little peace, an end to the pain. He looked at Corbin, his blue eyes filled with an unnerving, almost supernatural empathy. You understand pain, don't you, Detective? I can see it in you. It's an old friend. I'm just doing my job, Doctor. Are you? Or are you looking for something else? Finch said. Are you looking for an answer? For a reason? Some things, Detective. Some things don't have a neat, tidy reason. Some things are just necessary. Like the tide. Like the fog. He was confessing. Right here, in the middle of the hall. He was confessing in parables. His arrogance and his compassion so intertwined they were a single, monstrous thing. You should get some rest, Detective, Finch said, placing a warm, dry hand on Corbin's shoulder. Corbin flinched, just as Mary Thorne had. You look tired. Finch smiled, that same small, private smile Chin had described, and walked away, his shoes making no sound on the polished floor. Chapter 11. The pattern. Corbin sat in his car, parked on the cliff road overlooking the bay, the engine off. The fog was a roiling sea below him. Finch's hand on his shoulder. You look tired. It was the key. The word. Mary Thorne. She was tired. Peter Sloane. He was done fighting. Agnes Gable. She was ready. The red herrings all evaporated. Evelyn Reed's motive was money. But these deaths didn't save the hospital real money. Not enough to risk this. They just tidied up the books. Nurse Sykes's motive was desperation. But her tenderness with her mother. She wasn't a killer. She was a caregiver, pushed to the edge. Arthur Gable's motive was greed. But he had no sentiment. Dr. Chen's motive was fear. He was a spectator, not a player. But Finch, his motive was mercy. A distorted, arrogant, controlling mercy. He wasn't killing them because they were a burden on the hospital. He was killing them because they were a burden on themselves. He was killing them because, like Corbin in Clara's room, he had wished for it to end. But unlike Corbin, Finch had the power to make it end. Corbin looked at the dashboard clock. 10:15 p.m. He'd been sitting for hours. He knew, with a sudden, chilling certainty, what Finch was doing. What he'd seen in the man's eyes. A completion. A need. He started the car. He drove to the hospital, parking in the back lot, just watching. He saw Evelyn Reed leave. He saw Nurse Sykes, slumped with exhaustion, get into her hatchback. The night staff arrived. At 10:23 p.m., drive. Finch's dark blue Volvo pulled into his reserved spot. He wasn't on call. He wasn't on the schedule. He was just coming to work. Corbin got out of his car. His heart was a cold, hard drum in his chest. Chapter 12. The ledger. The fog was thick again, muffling Corbin's footsteps as he followed the doctor. Finch didn't use the main entrance. He used a keycard to enter a side door marked staff only. Corbin caught the door before it clicked shut. He was in a service corridor. He could hear the hum of a vending machine, the distant rumble of the hospital's generators. He followed the sound of Finch's unhurried, confident footsteps. The doctor wasn't going to the third floor. He was going to the basement, to the old wing. This part of St. Jude's was different. It was the original 1920s building. The lights were dimmer. The paint was peeling in long, leprous strips. It was storage, mostly. Old beds with cracked vinyl mattresses, forgotten equipment draped in dusty sheets, like corpses. It smelled of mildew and dust and something else, ozone, like old electrical wiring. Finch stopped at a heavy oak door marked Records Annex. He unlocked it with a key. A real, old-fashioned brass key. He went inside. Corbin waited 30 seconds, his breath pluming in the cold air. He drew his service weapon, holding it down at his side. He pushed the door. It was unlocked. The room was filled with floor-to-ceiling metal shelves, bowed with the weight of thousands of paper charts. A single bare bulb hummed overhead, casting long, distorted shadows. Alistair Finch was at a small desk in the corner. He was not, as Corbin had expected, tampering with evidence. He was writing. He was writing in a large, leather-bound ledger, the kind that was centuries out of date. He was using a fountain pen, the nib scratching faintly in the silence. "Doctor," Corbin said. Finch didn't startle. He didn't even look up immediately. He carefully blotted the ink on the page, then closed the book. He turned in his chair, his face calm, illuminated by the single, dim light. He looked relieved. "Detective Corbin," he said, his voice soft, almost welcoming. "I wondered how long it would take you." "What is this, Doctor?" "This?" Finch patted the ledger. "My work. My real work. The charts upstairs. They're for the insurance companies, for the administrators, for the lawyers. This is for me." "What work?" Corbin asked, stepping closer. He could see the book's cover. It was embossed with a single, gold-leaf word, "Passages." "The work of a gardener, perhaps," Finch said, his blue eyes unnervingly clear. "Tending the crop, knowing when it's time to prune. When a bloom has faded." Agnes Gable, Peter Sloane, Mary Thorne. Finch nodded slowly. Agnes. She was so tired. Her children hadn't visited in a year. She was a shell. She held my hand and said, "Alistair, don't let me become a vegetable." I promised I wouldn't. It was a release, a clean, quiet passage. And Peter? Was he ready? Finch's brow furrowed. Peter was a different case. He was in agony. Not just his lungs, his life. He'd lost everything. He was a failure. He sobbed in the night, when he thought no one was listening. He was a mess. I tidied things up. I gave him the peace he couldn't find for himself. "You're a murderer," Corbin said, the words tasting like ash. "No," Finch said, and his voice was suddenly sharp, arrogant, the voice of a man who had never been questioned. "I am a doctor. I do what is necessary. You, detective, you see the end, the body, the mechanics of it. I see the whole, the life, the suffering, the indignity." "And Mary Thorne?" Corbin's voice was dangerously low. "Her husband said she was fine. She was recovering." "Mary?" Finch's gaze drifted, as if to a fond memory. Mary was terrified, not of dying, of going home, to him, to that loud, brutal, broken man, to that empty house, with her son in jail. She She begged me, not with words, with her eyes. Every time he left, that flinch Elias saw, it wasn't for me, detective. It was for him. When he'd grab her arm, she just wanted to rest. So I gave her rest. With potassium chloride. It's clean, Finch said, as if describing a medical procedure. It mimics a natural event. It's merciful. And the insulin for Agnes? A gentle sleep. She was not a diabetic. Her system accepted it. She just slipped away. You've been doing this for a long time. Finch smiled. A small, sad, proud smile. He opened the ledger. Corbin looked. Dates, names, doses, and a small, one-line justification. March 14, 2018. Thomas Abernathy, 100 milligrams morphine sulfate. The pain was too great. July 2, 2020. Sarah Jenkins, 80 units Novolog. The loneliness was terminal. September 10, 2023. Peter Sloan, 60 milligrams midazolam. The despair was complete. October 3, 2024. Agnes Gable, 120 units Novolog. The dignity was gone. October 12, 2024. Mary Thorne, 40 MEq potassium chloride. The fear was too much. Dozens of names. Years of it. A secret history of St. Jude's, written by its most trusted hand. This is your mercy? Corbin asked, his voice shaking with a rage he hadn't felt in years. A rage that was tangled up with Clara, with his own helplessness. This is control. This is arrogance. You're playing God, Alistair. Finch's face darkened. I am not playing, detective. I am taking responsibility. The one thing no one else will. I am the one who has to look them in the eye. I am the one who has to watch them fade, beg, and break. You stand on the shore and judge. I am in the water, with the drowning. I am the only one strong enough to do what is right, to provide the final comfort. What about the scrawled signature on the insulin log? Finch almost laughed. Oh, that, Nurse Sykes. She's been supplementing her mother's pain medication for months, stealing small doses of morphine. A good nurse, but compromised. I allowed it. Her mother is in great pain. It was a mercy, and it was useful. It provided a context, a shadow, just in case you framed her. I provided an alternative narrative, Finch corrected, just as I encouraged Ms. Reed's investigation into inventory shrinkage. It's good for administrators to feel busy. And Dr. Chen? He's so terrified of a malpractice suit, he wouldn't question me if I prescribed poison. He saw me with Mary, just before. He saw me with an IV. He knew, but he'll never speak. He's a coward. He had thought of everything. He had used everyone's weakness. Reed's ambition, Sykes's desperation, Chen's fear. He had hidden in plain sight. His compassion his shield, his authority his weapon. The town's saint, the town's savior. Alistair Finch, Corbin said, raising his weapon, his hand rock steady. You are under arrest for the murders of Agnes Gable, Peter Sloan, Mary Thorne, and God knows how many others. The doctor looked at the gun, then at Corbin's eyes. The arrogance faded, replaced by a profound, fathomless weariness. The mask was off. The performance was over. Do you know, detective, he said, his voice barely a whisper, how heavy it is to be a saint, to carry all that hope, all that suffering? He slowly stood, placing his hands on the desk, on top of his ledger. The weight, he said, as Corbin produced the handcuffs. It's unbearable. Chapter 13. The fog lifts. The fog was lifting as Detective Miles Corbin drove out of Crestwater Bay. The sun was a pale, watery disk, trying to burn through the last of the gloom. The news had shattered the town. Disbelief, rage, And, most terrifying of all, a quiet, whispered understanding. Some, like Elias Thorne, were broken with rage, camped outside the police station demanding justice. Others, the families of the names in the ledger, were silent. They were forced to re-examine their own clean, quiet grief. Had they missed something? Or had they, on some unspoken,